Is salt bad for you? That's what we're going to talk about in this video. Now, we've all heard that sodium is bad for you, but how true is that? We're going to take a look at this from two perspectives. One, is a high sodium intake bad for weight loss? Two, is a high sodium intake bad for blood pressure? But before we get into the video, hi, my name is Ryan Treadaway, founder of TreadawayTraining.com, where we help busy professionals get more results in less time through online training. Now, if you want more information on body transforming training and nutrition topics, consider subscribing. I got the idea for this video from an Examine.com article titled The Top 20 Nutrition Myths of 2020. And I thought it would be fun to take some common training and nutrition myths, talk about why these myths aren't entirely true, and then talk about the truth behind the myth, if there is any. With this correct information in hand, you'll have some practical takeaways that will actually be beneficial to you, rather than extreme recommendations like, if you eat one carbohydrate, you will die. At the end of the video, let me know in the comments if you like this video and if this is a series that you would like to see me continue. Myth number one, is sodium bad for weight loss? Now, this isn't quite as prevalent of a myth, but is still something that I hear on a pretty regular basis. So let me say this right out of the gate. Sodium does not affect fat loss. Sodium intake has a short-term effect on weight, but it does not impact changes in fat. Our bodies like to maintain a certain balance of sodium and water in the bloodstream. Because of this, if you have a significantly higher than normal sodium intake one day, your body will retain water in order to keep that balance. And because of this, when you step on the scale the next morning, you will weigh more because of that added water. But then it will drop back down to normal because your body will detect that you're taking in more sodium, and as a result, your body will excrete more sodium in order to bring things back into balance. Similarly, if you have a significantly lower than normal sodium intake one day, your body will excrete extra water in order to maintain your balance. Therefore, when you step on the scale the next day, your body weight will be lower. However, your body weight will then go back to normal because your body will detect that you're taking in less sodium and will excrete less sodium in order to bring things back into balance. In other words, sodium intake has an acute effect on body weight, but it does not have a lasting effect. The other part of this myth that may contain some truth is that a high sodium intake can contribute to a high blood pressure. And before we dive into this myth any further, I do want to state for the record that I am not a doctor and this is not medical advice. It is true that a high sodium intake is associated with high blood pressure. In other words, people who tend to take in more salt have a higher instance of high blood pressure. That said, this doesn't mean that the salt caused their high blood pressure. Just because two things are correlated or associated, that doesn't mean that one caused the other. Correlation does not equal causation. Correlation simply means that two variables follow the same trend over time. To drive the point home that two things being correlated doesn't necessarily mean that they have anything to do with each other, I reached out to Tyler Vegan of Spurious Correlations, and I came up with a few fun examples for you guys. Did you know per capita cheese consumption has a 95% correlation with the number of people who have died by becoming strangled in their bed sheets? Did you know that the divorce rate in Maine has a 99% correlation with per capita consumption of margarine? Lastly, did you know that the number of people who drown after falling out of a fishing boat has a 95% correlation with the marriage rate in Kentucky? Tyler actually has a full book of these funny correlations if you do want to check that out, which I will link down in the description below. Unlike these examples that correlate completely unrelated things, it's much more reasonable to assume that your sodium intake plays some part in high blood pressure. The issue here is there are many confounding variables. For instance, a high sodium intake is also associated with a higher calorie consumption, a higher consumption of processed foods, less exercise, and higher body weight, which I would argue are bigger contributors than sodium intake. In fact, a 1996 review that looked at 2 studies, including nearly 3,000 individuals total, concluded that weight loss was the single most effective means of lowering blood pressure. In one of the studies reviewed, it was found that a 10-pound reduction in weight led to an average reduction in diastolic blood pressure of 11.6 millimeters of mercury, and a 5-pound reduction in weight led to an average reduction of 7 millimeters of mercury. Millimeters of mercury being the standard unit of measurement for blood pressure. On the other hand, a 2018 review that looked at the effects of reducing sodium intake on blood pressure stated, "In this systematic review, we found limited evidence for modest improvement in clinical symptoms from reducing salt intake in outpatients. A paucity of robust, high-quality evidence was available to support or refute current guidelines." A 2014 review also looking at the effect of reducing sodium intake on blood pressure found a 4.14 millimeters of mercury reduction in systolic blood pressure and no difference in diastolic blood pressure. In other words, body weight is a much more important factor to consider when it comes to blood pressure. I've actually trained a few clients with high blood pressure, and after helping them lose weight, they were able to come off of their blood pressure medication, and that's without stipulating any type of sodium limit. That said, there are a very small number of people out there who are salt sensitive, and for these individuals, sodium intake has a greater impact on their blood pressure than it would with a normal individual. If you think you may be one of these individuals, then you may want to discuss that with your doctor. Now, with all this being said, I'm not saying that you should just go add a ton of sodium in your diet. All I'm saying is, unless you're one of these salt sensitive individuals, you shouldn't necessarily concern yourself with your sodium intake. You should put more emphasis on the bigger factors, such as having an overall healthful diet, exercising, getting plenty of sleep, and making sure you stay in a healthy weight range. So what do you think? Is this a series that you'd like to see me continue? Let me know down in the comments below, and I actually have another myth-busting topic that I'm going to cover on the blogcast tomorrow, and I will have that link down there as well. If you like the video, give it a thumbs up. If you hate it, give it a thumbs down. If you want more content just like this, consider subscribing, or you can check out one of the videos that will be up on the screen. You can also check us out on the Treadaway Training Blogcast. We're there every Sunday at 3 p.m. That's treadawaytraining.com/blog. As always, God bless you and your family, and we'll see you tomorrow. I really don't want to do this. I'm not gonna like this thumbnail. It's just gonna suck. Gonna make a mess. Don't even know if I'm gonna be able to see this in the picture. Oh. Here we go. All right, here we go. Here we go. Well, I hope I got that. Oh! I hope I got that.